Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Sharifah Hardie. And first, before I do anything else, I want to wish everyone a happy Monday. It's Monday, starting off the week. And like I tell everybody, my favorite day of the week is a Monday. I love the energy of a Monday. So I know this show is going to be incredible. And we have a very special guest today, Mr. Matthew Sexton. Good morning, Matthew. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifah. How you doing today?
Excited, as you can see, way too much sugar, too much coffee. I'm up this morning. It's 8 o'clock, and I'm bouncing off the walls.
So yeah, it's 11 for me. So you were up very early for me. I've had a couple hours to warm up. So
Oh no, no, no! I've been up for 3 hours.
okay,
That's why I'm like 8 o'clock is no problem. I'm a morning person. Now, your company, Matthew, is
yes,
Mental Wealth Solutions, and so often when I meet people, especially when I do card readings and tarot readings for people, there's this certain image that only certain people are into readings. Now, you speak about mental health, you speak about wealth, but when you sent over your information and I was reading,
hmm
I was like, how can someone of your caliber even be in the tarot? What's your history with tarot?
I when I was like in high school, I had a deck of tarot cards, and I had to use a little book to figure out what was going on.
Mhm.
But I really kind of have always had some sort of a spiritual side. I try to bring like science, spirituality, the universe all together. And I know one thing for right now that I'm kind of working on is getting back to my spiritual side.
Mhm.
I feel like that's been kind of missing. I feel like I've been very definitely in touch with my science side of things.
Mhm.
But I think there's been some other things that, my emotional cup, my spiritual cup. And I think in order for me to kind of get myself to be the best that I can, I got to put them all back together and kind of get my chi back adjusted. So the past couple of weeks, that's what I've really been kind of focused on. I went 2 weeks ago to a great event in the Hamptons, where it was meditation as well as somatic dancing with a great. I'm into electronic dance music, so there was a Brazilian Afro house, desert house DJ played for like 2 hours, and it's just me trying to get back into, hey, this is who I am as a person, because I feel kind of over the past couple of months, and especially even with the pandemic, a lot of those things were kind of taken away, and now I'm bringing them back to myself.
That's wonderful, wonderful. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before I move
Mhm.
forward, I want to say good morning to Alicia. Alicia says, amazing. I'm just starting to read some of the comments. I want to let everyone know that I read from the Arcanum Tarot. I love this deck. You can hardly see it, but I fell in love with it because it has the lover's card on it. And just
Mhm.
the fact that these two people are in love, staring at each other, and they see each other was why I was so impressed and so in love with this deck. And so what I
Mhm.
do at the beginning of every reading is I just start to shuffle the cards so I can
Okay.
connect to the energy and also connect to your energy. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what you said, Matthew, because you said that all of a sudden um, you just made the decision to start going back into your spiritual side, which is
Mhm.
interesting to me because a few weeks ago I said, I think I need to focus a little bit more on my spiritual side and more on spirituality. So we had a show yesterday, and the guest Tanya, incredible show. But we
Mhm.
had a discussion on an expression she uses called assign your sign, which means that so often we ask for a sign from God, a sign from spirit, a sign from the universe, a sign from the heavens on how we should go and how we should move. And then maybe we get a sign and then we go, was that a sign? I need a sign here sign. I need that. I always think about Bruce Almighty, the movie, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Right.
He starts to get all these signs,
Yeah.
but it's like, okay, but was that the sign? Is that the sign? How do you know it's a sign? So for you, what moved you to start going back into spirituality?
I felt ambivalence. I
Okay.
didn't know if it was like a calm or ambivalence. And I just really felt like there was a huge connection, a huge kind of vacuum inside of me missing. And for me, it was like, okay, how am I going to now fill this vacuum? What exactly with me is missing? I know I'm doing plenty of work. I know I have great friends. I do plenty of socializing and supportive people in my life. I know also though that I wanted to make some new connections, and I kind of felt like that was the area where I wanted to make these connections because I wanted healthy people around me.
Mhm.
I think if I go all the way back to the pandemic, which was, I was a director for a dialysis company, and everything that kind of went on was very, very scary, and it created a really toxic mind frame for me.
Mhm.
And I know I did a lot of work coming out of that, and then just some other things that have kind of occurred in life.
Mhm.
Some things that have really kind of tested how I cope with emotions. And I'm glad that at least, I am my own therapist. I've been working on these things, processing these things, because there is a fine line when we cope. There is a fine line when we process things. And sometimes we can process things so well that unfortunately we kind of take our power away from ourselves. And I think for me, the big thing was like, how do I get back spiritually in tune with myself? How do I start feeling happy and joyful and curious
Mhm.
about the world and the universe again, because I was just a little bit tired of constantly feeling worried.
Hmm. Very interesting. So the answer was to look more into your spirituality. What do you do at Mental Wealth Solutions?
I work with individuals who are looking to kind of figure life out. I do a lot of life transitions, working with people who are like starting their professional careers in their 20s or in their 30s. I do a lot of work with individuals who are kind of like coping with trauma,
Mhm.
different kinds of trauma. I also work with a lot of individuals who are just, basically like, hey, I've been a pretty toxic person my whole entire life, and how do I change myself? How do I become a better person?
Mhm.
So the first thing that I do is I take the science aspect, which is, hey, this is your brain, and guess what? Our brains are kind of mean and nasty and pessimistic with us because they love us. And when you tell someone that, they're like, what do you mean? Like, I love other people and I'm so much nicer to them. I'm like, yeah, we got to learn to talk to our brain the same way that we talk to other people. So I use cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and mindfulness. And for me, mindfulness is kind of a part of that spiritual connection that I've gotten away from, and I'm looking to get back into, is being more mindful, being more aware. And we use that. And we developed a method called the Stoic method, which stands for stop, take a breath, because by taking a breath, through meditation, that slows down our body, that helps to ground us and pull us into that present moment to observe that emotion. And part of observing the emotion, whether we look at them as being an emotion that we enjoy or an emotion that we want to get rid of, is to appreciate it.
Mhm.
And we as human beings, we don't really appreciate, especially those negative emotions. I could appreciate something, an emotion that I've had recently, like anger,
Mhm.
and I can appreciate it because, hey, I care.
Mhm.
And does that necessarily mean that I want to continue to be angry? No, but part of me kind of getting myself out of the anger process is say, okay, I appreciate this emotion. This emotion is telling me something.
Mhm.
What's going to be the kind choice for myself? Now, if I react to that emotion of anger, I could do all sorts of little silly things that I'm not going to be proud of later on. But if
Mhm.
I can act within my values, and I think the big part of my journey right now, my healing right at this moment, is to focus on that. What's within my values, and what's the kind choice that I can make for myself?
Mhm. So how does that play along with wealth? How does that factor into the wealth aspect of what you do?
I'm looking to help people grow, their spiritual wealth, their mental wealth. And I think when you do both of those things, I'm not going to necessarily say financially it pays off, but I think it pays off in something that we can't necessarily measure. And that's just called happiness.
Hmm.
Look, Sharifah, I am not exactly, I am hiring right now, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that opportunity for other people who are out there trying to, start their own practice, or if that's their goal. But I feel that wealth is our happiness, and I felt like there was a point in time, especially right before the pandemic, even though I wasn't making a lot of money. I mean, I was making $15 an hour working for Salvation Army as an assistant project coordinator doing repair rebuild for Superstorm Sandy. And I got to tell you, Sharifah, if they called me up today and they said, hey, we need you to do this again on Long Island right now for 15 beans, I'd drop everything and I would do it because it was my favorite work on the planet. Like sitting there, meeting someone who's lost everything, their home, and
Wow.
saying, yeah, and saying, okay, we're gonna sit down, and I know it's tough right now and dealing with that emotional aspect, that spiritual aspect of losing something, and saying we're gonna do everything within our power to bring you back. That for me was like one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And I got to be honest with you, I had a bartend at that time. I was living with my parents. I made no money. It was from that aspect. It was really tough. But for here, Like that was the kind of work that I enjoyed doing. And that's what wealth really is. It's about finding out what that happiness is. One of the things that I discuss with my clients on a regular basis, and I even got tattooed on my wrist, is a Japanese term of ikigai. And what that is we should wake up every single day and try to do something within our purpose that makes ourselves happy. And I think I'm just really lucky that I was able to find a career of social work that actually allows me to do that. I tried a lot of different things. I worked in a lot of different toxic environments. I'll even go so far as to say I probably wasn't the best person on the planet, but I did do the work and I got back in touch with myself. And now I think I'm able to, pass that on to other human beings and give them opportunity to be the best person they can be.
I love what you had to say. I'm going to pick it apart a little bit because I want to make sure I understood you clearly. Because what I heard you say, Matthew, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have this career, you have this business, you have mental wealth solutions, but you would go somewhere else to help people at $15 an hour. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, I would figure out how to do both of them. Like if there was a hurricane that hit Long Island tomorrow and I was contacted by Salvation Army, hey, we need you. I'd be like, yeah, let's figure this out. I'll do this.
Just to help people.
Yeah, why not?
That's rare these days because I think so often we're so focused on the money that we tend, and I say we, because that's a general we, but that we tend to forget about being of service. And that's one of my focuses right now. One of my primary focuses is how can I be of service? So what I thought what you had to say was beautiful, but I always say this to everyone. This is like the weirdest thing for me because I launched my first podcast in 2009. I've interviewed hundreds and thousands of professionals, but when they tell their story, they always make it sound so easy. You talk about your growth, you talk about the things that happen, you talk about changing yourself, but just looking at you just look so calm. Like, yeah, I became a better person. I gave up all my toxic traits. But really, was it that easy, Matthew?
No, I will absolutely say that there are still toxic things that I do. They're still not great. I love to go out. I love to go out and I love to party. I will be that person where the third or fourth drink and you're like, hey, we want to go home. I'm like, let's have one more. But here's the thing though. I at least I am mindful of it. I make sure that I am not around other people who, I don't want to influence somebody the wrong way. And I will absolutely say ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to go pop off some steam.
Okay.
And if you want to come with me, that is great. The most trouble that we're going to get into is I'm probably going to forget if I paid the bar tab. If it's that much fun of a night, we may end up going to a club or something like that. Who knows? Because I like to go on an adventure every now and then. Okay. But I make people aware of it up front. Like, hey, this is what I would like to do tonight. I'll also though, like if I'm, if somebody's important enough to me and I'm in a relationship and they're like, I don't want to do this tonight, I'll be like, okay, fine. I won't do that tonight. So I have the ability to set that boundary and limit, but I know that there are certain times like, hey, I can do this and I can do that. I'll let you know I'm an anxious attachment. So I'm pretty hyper aware of when I do something that's outside of my values. Okay. And part of being human is not being perfect and having compassion for myself. So I know when those things happen, I know the first step is I got to forgive myself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, I don't go to the other person and say, hey, look, I dropped the ball on that one, my bad.
Wow. I want to welcome Angel. Angel says, hey, Angel. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead and share the show because Matthew and I are having a very interesting conversation. When I asked for a toxic trait, I don't know what I expected, but I wouldn't consider that toxic because one of the things that you seem to me is very self-aware. Like you're like, I do this is who I am. To me, that's more of a love me or leave me kind of thing. As long as you're upfront, you let people know what the situation. So how is that toxic?
Because sometimes you're around people who can't necessarily handle the same thing. And sometimes you create a codependency.
Okay.
And you have to take responsibility for your role in that.
You are very self-aware. And so you said you learned tarot when you were in high school. You picked up a deck.
Yes. I think I was Wiccan for a little while, and that's how I got into it.
You think?
Like a hot minute. I might have met like a girl in high school that was Wiccan and thought it was cool.
You don't remember back then?
I don't. I have my reunion coming up. Nobody's going to tell me.
They're going to be like, Matthew, you were trouble in high school. Okay.
No, my high school was very good at throwing me in detention all the time to make sure I didn't get in any trouble. That'll admit. But I did throw the senior prom booze cruise, and if anybody went to the hospital, I was going to be expelled. But I got through that one.
So how long did you use your deck?
I don't even remember. Like, honestly, it might still be somewhere in my parents' house in my closet. I probably used it for maybe like a year or two, and then maybe I broke it out like once or twice in college to look cool.
Okay. And then you put it behind you.
I wouldn't say I put it behind me.
Okay.
I would just say I packed it in a bag somewhere, and I haven't opened up that part of the bag in a while, long time.
Okay. I was just wondering because for me, I've gone through these stages with my decks. I mean, there were times where I was doing readings and I take the cards and I throw them away. I'm like, I'm not doing this ever again. And then a few years later, I see something, I'm called to do something, and then I pick the deck back up. 20 years ago, my mom told me to go do readings for people because we were going to psychic fairs. And she was like, you can do that, Sharifah. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. And then 20 years later, this is the only thing that I want to do is to be of service and do readings for people.
Well, can I tell you a secret, and you can promise just keep it here?
I won't tell anybody except the people who are watching.
I'm a Leo Virgo cusp. I originally thought I was August 22nd, but my mom let me know this year my mom would never lie to me.
Okay.
It's backdated. So I'm actually a Virgo. And I need to know if this counts. So it was full moon. Was it full moon in Virgo recently? We had some gates open and some fun stuff like that.
Yes.
I let ChatGPT do my tarot reading for like the first time in like 20 or 30 years. And it gave me the devil upside down. And I've been kind of wigging out ever since. So does that count or like,
that counts?
Oh my goodness. All right.
That counts. That tells me that it came back up in your energy field, because even though you allow ChatGPT to do it, you are the one who requested it, asked for ChatGPT to do the reading. That definitely counts. It's coming back up in your energy field. So I actually love that. For me, I don't do any type of reversals. I always do every card upright. And that's what I tell people, don't judge me, Matthew, but I have this Pollyanna view of the world, and I'm an Aries, the infant of the universe, right? So all I see is butterflies and unicorns. I don't see anything as far as a definite negative. What I see is maybe there's a challenge there. Maybe there's some area where you need to focus on. So even with the devil, one of the most positive aspects of the devil is unbreakable bonds, right? But one of the things, even in the devil card, is that you are not chained to the devil. At any point in time, you can take your chains off. You can walk away, right? So the devil is really about overindulgence. And so when I hear you and you tell me about this toxic trait and you're like, I want more drink, I'm like, yeah, that really is the devil energy, because there's nobody there with a gun to your head saying, Matthew, you have to take this drink. It's really a choice that you make. So even that I wouldn't see as a negative. It's one of those things that goes, hey, you might want to take a look at this, and you might want to be aware of this. But when I was looking at the information that you sent over, you had some, especially with the tower, how you associate it. Let's talk about that. How you associate. Talk about the tower for me in your eyes.
What did the tower? Just remind me again. Which
there was a topic about tower and toxicity. The tower and toxicity.
Oh, you mean kind of like playing with house money and toxicity, where you kind of get to a point where we don't think things can get worse, so we stay in toxic relationships, and that person's like, "Hey, hold my beer," or that environment's like, "Hey, hold my beer."
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of like it's kind of like a world of it's like when we look at that in science is like learned helplessness. So I work with a lot of individuals who are in toxic relationships, individuals who are being betrayed. And I know from like a therapist standpoint, I'm able to reach into that. And recently I've been kind of healing from my own situation. And I think that the biggest challenge that I've noticed with my clients and even for myself is we have to kind of sit and we have to kind of suffer in silence.
Okay.
Because number one, like if you talk about it, the first thing people say is like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with this.
Right.
The reality of it is that, when someone is betrayed, and a lot of my clients are anxious attachments, and I'm an anxious attachment as well. We're people pleasers. And we're needed in this world. We do a lot of great work. So when we look at this, we kind of go into a survival mode. And our survival mode isn't like, hey, like you betrayed us and you hurt us. Our survival mode is, hey, how do we fix this?
Okay.
How do we make this relationship work out? Because we're human beings, and
Mhm.
even though we can hang out by ourselves, we really like other human beings. Like we have this skew towards them, where we will put up with a lot in order to like maintain them within our groups. And as we kind of keep going, we have to hope. And I will absolutely say I've worked with people who have uh, you know, engaged and I guess in the betrayer role of relationships. And they've been like,
Mhm.
okay, I did this, like I got caught. And they actually sit there and they work on it to like, how did this happen? Like, what am I doing with myself? What led to this? They're really trying to gain that insight.
Mhm.
And I think from looking at from the perspective of being in the relationship as well as for my clients and being in the relationship, we sit there and we hear, hey, it's not going to happen again.
Mhm.
And we believe that because
Mhm.
we're believers. And we say, what do we have to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Like, what do I have to fix with me?
Mhm.
And sometimes that can lead us to being open for some like really manipulative and gaslighting behavior,
Mhm.
where all of a sudden it's like, well, no, part of this happened because of you. And you're like, okay, let me scratch my head, and now let me figure it out. Because as a people pleaser, as a problem solver, as anxious people are, we now feel like we have some skin in the game.
Okay.
And sometimes people will work on it because legitimately it takes two to tango. I mean, we all play a role in everything.
Mhm.
But on the other end, we have to hope that that other person is also willing to work on it. Couples therapy is a great place to do that. Individual therapy, working together, I think in healthy activities to build a bond are ways that you can heal from these things because they do happen. I think, though, unfortunately, what happens to a lot of us, especially anxious attachment, is we have such a high belief in other human beings. I was trying to think of an analogy earlier today, and I thought of it as like imagine a relationship being two frogs, and they're in a pond. The whole entire goal is we want to sit on top of these lily pads because
Mhm.
on top of these lily pads we're safe, and every single lily pad could be a particular thing, a place, a thing, an institution that we have as human beings.
Mhm.
And for many of us, we kind of get to a point where that other person takes away all those lily pads.
Mhm.
And now we're just kind of stuck, just kind of floating there. And that floating there is like, what else can go wrong for us? And that's where we kind of start to make a decision and we start to ask ourselves, why am I here? What
Mhm.
am I doing? We start to go out of that fixing mode and we go into a worry mode. And I see this across the board. And I even see this now with myself of because our brain doesn't care if your environment is safe or unsafe. I mean,
Mhm.
I've worked in substance abuse with some people who are in some absolutely abusive relationship. And I will say this for the most part, I think people who are abusive are not aware of it. I think they need a lot of healing.
Mhm.
I think that there are obviously some other things that are skewed, but I think most people fall in that area. And I think most of the people who I am working with, and people that I've dealt with in my own life, I think they have goodness in them. It's been very rare where I've met someone that doesn't. And I knock on wood that continues.
Mhm.
But with that being said, I think once all of those lily pads are pulled away, you're just kind of floating in a pond saying, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
Because your brain doesn't care if things are safe or unsafe. It says you're familiar with this. And
Mhm.
because it loves you, it says if you go out there and you try to engage with that world, it's going to hurt you again.
Mhm.
So what I do is I work with my clients and myself right now, and I also have my own therapist to empower myself
Mhm.
because I don't want to be worried anymore. I don't want to sit around at night and someone's going out to go do something related to their job. I know I'm going to have thoughts because that's my experience, and I know those thoughts are my brain protecting me. But
Mhm.
do I want those thoughts to control my actions, or do I want to start looking things curiously and saying, you know what, like, hey, this is going to be okay. This is how you rebuild trust. And
Mhm.
it's not that I'm rebuilding trust with someone else or someone new or someone old. It's about me rebuilding trust with myself and realizing my own value.
You are very self-aware. I love it. And not only that, you have a caring heart, right? I love how you said that there's good in everyone. I believe that as well, but I also believe that not everyone looks for the good in everyone else. We put our walls up, we put our blinders up, and we believe that the world is going to hurt us, so we don't look for the good. And it's also been my experience with a lot of the people that I've had on my different shows, a lot of people that I talk to, that for them to go and see or speak to someone such as yourself, they usually have hit rock bottom. Like they've really gotten to the point where they have absolutely no other, they like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what's going
Mhm.
on. I don't know how I keep getting into these relationships. I don't know how I'm the abuser. And so when they get to this point where they don't know, then is when they go to someone and go, look, I need help. Has that been your experience as well?
I think that's originally how I started therapy. I think though at this point in time, like I enjoy therapy. Like I like going. It is a safe place for me to speak. And I think what you're really talking about is we don't have a very good mental health system.
Okay.
We unfortunately have a mental health system where large institutions, insurance companies, they want to make, they don't see the long-term benefits of going to therapy. Even if
Mhm.
you just go to a talk therapy, you get some stuff off of your chest. It releases anxiety. It puts your your HPA pathway kind of back into homeostasis, and
Mhm.
that's a really important place for us to be. It's kind of like a short-term rebound effect just from talking. Like just talking to you today about things that I've really never spoken about, like kind of publicly outside of a therapy office. I'm gonna like walk downstairs and be like, oh wow, like I have a little bit of therapeutic value because I spoke my truth. So
Right.
we get that, and over the long term, that helps with things like diabetes, hypertension. So we
Right.
unfortunately have this system that says, hey, you can't go until you've hit rock bottom. It
Right.
has to be a big secret. So now we're going to put a stigma on it. And then on top of that, I got to label you with something. And then I have to hope your insurance company doesn't have a problem with it. Because if I see you for 53 minutes, that's a big deal for the insurance company. I have to show a medical necessity. But if I see you twice a week where I'm doubling just as much, billing just as much, they have no problem with that. So we don't really look at this as being proactive, and that's really what it should be. It's a system that's also designed to make it very difficult for people like myself to make a living off of.
Mhm.
And I think what we really need to do is have people kind of step back and say, hey, how do we make this available to everyone? You
Mhm.
get to go to your primary care once a year and get a physical exam. That is supposed to save the system money. Why aren't we giving people the tools to manage their brain that creates all of these thoughts and feelings and all of these ailments over time?
Mhm.
I worked with people who were in end stage renal disease, and I think one of like the common threads was low socioeconomic status, no resources, and most importantly, nobody to talk to.
Mhm.
And what if we had just had somebody just kind of sit there and work with them and train people to problem solve? I mean, one of the things I love to do is my clients will be like, I can't do this. I'm like, why not? Like, why don't we sit here for like 45 minutes and see if we can figure out how to do it, no matter how ridiculous it might sound.
Mhm.
And that for somebody is amazing, because the first thing like when I was like, okay, I'm just going to go full-time private practice, my brain's like, you're crazy.
Mhm.
Like, that's not going to work. And I'm like, no, we're going to figure out a way to sit down and make this work. And
Right.
having a therapist is somebody where you can sit down and be like, look, I might have this like crazy goal and this is what I want to do. And the therapist is like, it doesn't really sound that crazy. How do you break this
Right.
down into tasks? I look at where I was like a couple of weeks ago. I kind of compare, like it's like climbing to Mount Everest. And a few weeks ago, I kind of hit that summit where there's like all the frozen people that have been there for like 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And you're too far up Mount Everest to go back down. And it's just like, hey, I'm already here. I've already done the hard part. This is the part that's going to be fun. So that's what I try to do with people. And that's kind of like my view. I think we should be meeting with people at least once a week, twice a week. We should have a safe space to kind of say, hey, this is what's going on without judgment. We should be able to talk about something in our life and not feel like we have this secret, this burden, because we have someone who can safely allow us to get these things out. And that's my philosophy. And that's what I try to bring to people.
Well, I might have to book me an appointment with you just to talk some more, because I am enjoying this conversation.
Thank
And
you.
as I listen to you, it reminds me of my growth even as a tarot reader, right? Because 20 years ago, and I've done readings for friends and family since then, but when I was doing more readings and really exploring doing this professionally 20 years ago, there were two things that changed. Number one, 20 years ago, when I would read for someone, I go straight into the cards.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of conversation, there wasn't a lot of talk, because I was like, they're here for a reading, they want a tarot card reading, let me just give them the cards, right?
Mhm.
And I missed so much of what they were going through. I missed so much of what they needed to hear. So now, just like for your reading, we've been talking about 30 minutes,
Mhm.
but I'm getting to the core of who you are as a person, right? So now I understood, because back 20 years ago, I would look at people sometimes, and honestly I would kind of judge them, and I would be like, okay, this person needs a therapist, not because I thought that they had mental illness, but
Mhm.
because I know they might need to just speak to someone. They need to have a
Mhm.
conversation, and they need a trained professional. So even now when I do readings, especially on certain topics, I always tell people, hey, let me explain this. I am not a licensed professional. I don't have a degree. I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you the world according to Sharifah Hardie. So now,
Mhm.
49, I'll be 50 in March. I'm that seasoned wise woman, and a lot of what I tell people has nothing to do with tarot. It has nothing to do with anything other than this person needs someone to talk to. And I find there are so many people who have absolutely no one they feel that they can talk to. They may be surrounded by 80 million people, but can they
Mhm.
just call Matthew and say, hey, Matthew, I just wanted to talk to you about how I feel?
Well, I would say this: we're in a world surrounded by humans where we don't feel as if we're allowed to be humans.
Yes.
I give everyone three rules when they consult with me. And rule number one is nobody knows what they are doing, including me. And I tell them, I say that out loud right now.
Yes.
I feel like,
Nobody knows what they're doing, including me.
how empowering is that?
It's empowering because I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing right now, where I'm moving, where I'm going. I'm just showing up as me today.
Yeah, and there are two ways that we look at that. I think there's like one way, like you look on like social media or the news, and you kind of scratch your head, like, how do they figure it out? Like, did they figure it out? Like, what are they doing? Like, they don't know anything, and they're acting like they know everything.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is just because our brain is just like, oh, what's going on? But we also don't know internally what's going on with them,
Mhm.
because we have this powerful thing that we can solve problems, and one of the most important problems that we try to solve is what are other people thinking.
Right.
And that's something that we don't know. But that rule of just knowing, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. That this is what it's supposed to be like is
Mhm.
empowering, because that helps to depower our worry. That
Right.
rule number two, I have everybody say it out loud as well. Is it's never a failure when I learn.
It's never a
And
failure when I learn.
yeah, and I've noticed so many times, and again, your brain loves you. It's going to tell you that you fail. You're going to fail at something, but you're not going to be able to succeed unless you take those steps. Your brain is
Yeah.
wrong. A long time ago when we were kids, we used to be curious about everything, and then we start to life,
Mhm.
and our brain, to protect us, starts to worry. So
Mhm.
some of this is like like grabbing that inner child of ours and starting to look at everything in life through that lens of curiosity. And
Mhm.
then the last and really the most important rule that we really all as human beings need to know and learn is, to treat ourselves with grace and compassion. And when that's a challenge, go back to rule number one, go back to rule number two. Because and I think that's really been important for me, and something that I really empower my clients to say, hey, like, have some compassion for yourself. You're gonna mess some stuff up.
Mhm.
I don't think a day goes by where I'm like, probably did not do that one right. How am I going to do that differently the next time? But most importantly, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm a human being. I'm pretty in the present right now. I'm going to get done with this, and I'm probably going to go into a little hot mess mode and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. Did I
Yeah.
talk too fast? Was I too anxious? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And guess what? That's okay.
Preach to him, Matthew. Preach, because that's what I do after every reading. I'm like, oh my God, did I give him the message? That's why I spend a lot of time, especially now. I'm
Mhm.
so grateful to be where I am in my life and just in my mental, because I take more time with my readings than I
Right.
did before. One of the reasons why I wouldn't do readings professionally before, because I had this idea of they're just cards. They're just
Mhm.
cards. Any idiot, any monkey, any trained monkey can flip over a card. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
doing anything special. Now I understand that that person came to me because they wanted a message. They wanted to hear from spirit. They wanted someone to be able to take their situation.
Mhm.
And that's another reason why I take more time prior to just doing the cards, is because it takes a moment for them to even get out what they came to me for. Right. So a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll be like, oh, can you tell me about my love life? Maybe that's what they're thinking about, but maybe that's not the message that they really needed to hear. So I have to kind of sit with them and sit in that
Mhm.
conversation. But then after it, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I gave them the message that they were really, they needed to hear. I hope I didn't mess that up. I hope I didn't misinterpret it. And I'm getting a lot better of just being okay with what comes out and what
Well,
happens.
yeah, I mean, you talk about like energy or connections, and I was briefly read it. I don't want to pretend I'm that smart, but I was reading an article about superposition and time travel, and what that is just different energy being in different parts of the universe, and there's a connection where
Right.
things can be hundreds, millions, billions of miles away, and one will go right, the other one has to go right as well. And I think that's just like one of the fascinating things about being a human being is just that curiosity of how did we get here? Like when you really think about it, like how lucky are we that we're on this rock that's traveling millions of miles per hour? It's spinning like a top as fast as possible with this big giant moon going around us. And then it's going around a sun, and that's spinning around the center of a galaxy, and there are galaxies collide. And here we are, like the odds are against us. And every single day, so many of us are just unable to embrace that.
But see, everything you just said to me is what always reminds me of the beauty of God. You know, a few years ago, I always share this story to kind of to help people. My son, I noticed that my son's 28 now, but this was when he was 21. You know, 21-year-olds know everything. And I noticed that he had updated his social media to say that he was an atheist. And I hit the roof, and I'm usually pretty calm with my kids. I'm more one of those life is about choices and consequences kind of parents. Like you make this choice, you'll get the consequence, and you'll see what happens. So I called him up and I said, take that down. And he was like, Mom, no. I said, no, take that down. I said, that's arrogant to say that there is no God, right? I said, I would be happy if you're agnostic. Be agnostic. You don't have to be a particular religion or particular practice, but to say beyond a shadow of a doubt that you know that there is no God, I find that very arrogant, right? I said, but ask God to show himself, show up in your life, because I believe that even God comes by invitation only. He doesn't force himself on anyone. And so over the years in his growth, he's become so spiritual that I'm like, oh, thank God. Because that's like, for me, like, come on now, you can't say that you know that, because who made the stars? There's so much that you can't account for aside from something that's greater than us, right? So that was just so beautiful. And Matthew, I can sit here and talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, I don't think either of us have.
All right.
So let's get to the reading. Let's see what
all right, let's go.
Comes up for Matthew.
I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. I've tapped into your energy. I've been shuffling, asking for clear signs and symbols that not only I will understand, but symbols that you will understand. Because at the end of the day, your reading has nothing to do with me. So the first card that I have right now for you, your main issue is the 5 of Swords. The beauty of this deck, it is so weird that I love it, is that anything white shows up almost angelic when I do it this way. Like there's a around it. So for me, the 5 of Swords is about conflict. This is about petty arguments, right? But sometimes we have to have these arguments or have these discussions in order to get our point across, especially when we decide to go in a different direction. There may be people around us who that creates conflict, because there are people who are comfortable with the old you. They're comfortable with the way you used to be. So when you decide that you want to be a better person, it would seem logical that everybody's like, yay, go Matthew. And it's not that they're trying to stunt your growth. I always think about this, the 5 of Swords and conflict, as when in the 90s, I built my first website. Back in the 90s, I had absolutely no idea how far ahead of my time I was. If I'd have known then the things that I know now, I would have bought every one-word domain that there was, and I'd be a billionaire by now. But I didn't, because I listened to the people around me. And it's so often the people around you, including your family, who love you the most, but because they love you, they give you this advice that affects your life. For instance, back in the 90s, there weren't that many websites. My family was just, and I wanted to be, because I was a teenage mom, I wanted to be I wanted to be at home with my children. I wanted to work from home. And back in the 90s, people were like, if you don't go to a job, then you're lazy, right? But now in 2025, the most successful people, majority of people work from home unless they're in an industry where they're not allowed to work from home. So it was the people who were telling me, oh, you have to do this, you have to get a job. And so that to me is always Five of Swords, is about these conversations and these conflicts. Swords are thoughts, they're ideas. The fives are always challenges. So this main issue right now is in your growth is some of the experiences, conversations, and conflicts that you may experience. So what's over that for me is the Queen of Swords. The Queen of Swords for me is always my mother's energy, which is beautiful because my mother's a Libra, right?
Okay.
Air sign. And one of the most fun, interesting shows that I've done in this lifetime, in this transition of my life, is the reading that I did for my mother. Because again, I'm a third generation reader, and my mom is the one who taught me how to read. And we were able to discuss a couple of days ago in the show, and it's on my social media, my YouTube, is I was like, it's so much better to be an adult and to read for my mom, because as a kid, it drove me crazy because my mom got it instantly. Libra, air signs usually just get it. Like they got the information, they know it. And me being a Aries, being a fire sign, just like Leo's, or whatever. What is your new sign, a Virgo?
I have no clue. I've been Leo Virgo. I'm still sticking with Leo.
Fire.
It is like you're very Leo, yeah.
I love Leos, but see, fire signs, we're heart based. We feel it. Whatever we're going through, we feel, right? So the Queen of Swords, this is about the information. The Queen of Swords knows everything, right? But the challenge of what you know. So this is a part for me of opening up to information and the things that are calling you to do. But whenever I see the Queen of Swords and I think about my mom, and we discussed the other day, is put a little love in the message. Understand that not everybody gets what you get, that not everybody sees what you see. And sometimes you have to put a spoonful of sugar in the medicine to help it go down. So if you have a fix or a truth or something that you want to tell somebody, also have a little love, have a little heart, and have a little compassion. Because the next card that I have for you is the Four of Pentacles. The Four of Pentacles for me is the Miser card. It's about holding on too tight, especially to finances and especially to resources. So whenever I get the Miser card, for me personally, it's a sign that I need to go shopping, right? Seriously, you're laughing, but that's my sign to go shopping. Now, it doesn't say go get retail therapy. It doesn't say go buy a house. It doesn't say buy a car. I always tell people, I said it on another show where it came up, you could go to the Dollar Tree. I don't know if y'all have Dollar Trees out in New York, or the 99-cent store, or whatever, but all of this is symbolic. It's symbolism. It's basically saying it's currency. Money is currency. It has to flow, right? Especially with the swords coming up. Even if other people say, hey, do you really need that? Do you need to buy that? Do you need to get that? No, but if you hold on too tight and you become the miser, then your resources are actually flowing. They're being held too tight, which actually in itself creates a blockage, because the next card that you have is the Ten of Pentacles. So this happens as a direct result of you shopping, of you letting go, of you spending and showing God, spirit, universe, that you believe that you have more than enough. And that's what showed up in the Miser, is that belief system. But in the Ten of Pentacles, this is my generational wealth card. This is legacy card. This is saying that you definitely have more than enough, because the only difference between the Nine of Pentacles and the Ten of Pentacles, in the Nine of Pentacles, she has enough. She already has enough money. She has enough wealth, but she doesn't have more than enough. The Ten of Pentacles is about having enough to share, enough to pass on for generations to come, not just enough for you. Even though in this card it shows 10 Pentacles, in many decks it's shown with a couple, the dog, the cat. There's like the whole family there. So this is about generational wealth. Which, in Mental Wealth Solutions, is money that you can be passed on for generations to come. Because the next card that you have is the Six of Swords. So the Six of Swords is telling me, for me, that's my sign for passage. It's about
Mhm.
going from one part of your life to another, which is what we talked about a little bit earlier. It's like all of a sudden you felt like this kind of like, okay, let me look into another area of my life. So Six of Swords, passage, right? So the shore is in sight. You can see the shore. You can see the next level of your life. You can see that, okay, finally this journey is over. However,
Mhm.
what the Six of Swords tells us is that you may be travel weary, right? When we start off on any journey, we're like, hey, I'm going, I'm excited. But after being on the ocean for about, a few weeks, we like, okay, when is this going to end? I'm
Mhm.
tired already. I just need to get to the promised land. So yes, you're arriving at the promised land. You use any last strength that you have to get there, because water always symbolizes renewal. It always symbolizes hope. So for this next journey, there is renewal. You're going into the next stage of your life. And the next card that you have is the Hierophant. The Hierophant is the first major arcana card that you've had. Most of the cards that you had so far have been swords or have been minor arcana cards. Arcana means
Mhm.
change, right? So there are major life changes and then there are minor life changes. Major life changes are things that change the course of history. These are your births, these are your deaths,
Mhm.
these are your marriages, these are your divorces. These are things where life will never be the same. Whereas minor arcana cards, I always think of them as everybody's received that survey, right? You go to some store and they send you that email, hey, what did you think of our customer service? On a scale of 1 to 10, what will you rate it, right? 10 being the best, one being you kind of suck. I'm gonna need you to work on your customer service. And usually, when you put a 1 on a survey, that's when you get the phone call from the company that just said, hey, we noticed you put a 1, you got our attention. What are you trying to tell us? And then you have this conversation. They make their customer service better, and then it changes. Major arcana cards like the Hierophant is my sign about spiritual truths. This is spiritual truths. That's what you're, and I can see that especially in conjunction with the Five of Swords, right?
Okay.
It's not about what's true for anybody else. It's about what's true for you. And that's why they say truth is a double-edged sword. It may hurt to tell someone the truth, but you have to be able to speak your truth. Again, there's just a gentle reminder that when you speak your truth, have compassion and have a heart for the people who are receiving this truth, because the Hierophant is about, again, in spiritual truths. I always think about that as people, maybe you were raised Catholic, but now you decided you were a Buddhist, right? Maybe your parents, that was true for your parents, but it's not something that's true for you. Like I said,
Mhm.
I'm an ordained minister, and then I have a son who decided he was an atheist. Okay, no, baby, you're not about to be that. So this is not about what's true for anyone else. This is about what's true for Matthew. You have to discern what's true for you and then express that to other people. And not everybody is going to like Matthew's truth, right? So the next card that you have is the Lovers. I love the Lovers. This is because I'm a hopeful romantic. I learned that from my friend. Shout out to Ren. Um, I was telling her about, I was like, Ren, I'm a hopeless romantic. I love love. And she was like, no, Sharifah, you're a hopeful romantic because you really believe in love and that you're hopeful. So the Lovers is about discernment. It's about choices, right? It's about looking at the person. That's why I love this card so much, is because when you look at someone eye to eye, there's nothing hidden. There's nothing that you don't see. And when you truly,
It's. I was going to say it's also on the front of the box.
yes, I love it. This is what called me to it. It's like I had to have this. But when you love someone, you love their good things, you love their bad things, you love everything about them. You may not like everything about them, but you love them. The other thing about the Lovers is about making a mature choice, right? The person that you chose at 16 is not going to be the person you might choose at 26 or 56, right? At
Right.
16, you might be like, she's hot. Like, does she have a brain? Is she a nice person? And you're like, I don't care, but she's hot, you know? So this is about really making those adult decisions and choosing what you want in a partner, but seeing them for who they are. because the next card that you have is the Two of Swords, and the Two of Swords is about decisions, choices. So again, it's saying the same thing, but it's a minor choice. This is not one of those, I'm going to go completely in a different direction, but I do have to make some choices, because the next card that you have is the Emperor. And the Emperor, again, being a major arcana card, the Emperor is the Aries card. It's one of our cards that symbolizes the Aries. And anytime there's a town, the Emperor energy is the one who goes in and creates order. This is the person who creates all the trains and creates all the buildings and creates the blueprint for what things are going to be, right? So, Matthew, those are the first 9 cards that I selected for you. Overall, what I'm feeling is, at this moment in life, you are making different choices, making different decisions for who Matthew is. Now, everybody may not like those decisions, but you have to find what's true for you and do what's best for you. So since I've done those 9 cards, I did a 10-card reading. The 10th card for me is always, okay, you said all of that. At the end of the day, what is the final outcome? And the 5 of Wands. The 5 of Wands.
Is that a good one?
They're all good, Matthew. We discussed this earlier.
I know. What does that one mean, though? Is that an arcanic or a minor? What is this?
It's a minor.
Like a major. Okay.
It's a minor. It's a minor. It's a minor. But all of the cards are beautiful. All the cards have a message, and it's really great as a final outcome, especially what we said, because, see, for me, reading is also, first of all, reading is about noticing what you notice. There are signs and there are symbols, and God is speaking to me in signs and symbols. And so out of all the cards, the 5 of Wands is the only wand that you picked, or I picked for you. You've had swords, you have pentacles, you have major arcana, but it's the first and the only wand, right? So wands symbolize action. Wands symbolize movement. So that's wonderful. After all this thought that you've put into it, and all this weighing and balancing and trying to figure out what's true for you, now you can go through the 6 of Swords. You can go through passion, through passage. You can move forward into who you're meant to be. Because the 5s, again, 5s are always challenges. That's why we think of it as a scale. So if you look at a scale, to get to 10, 5 is the halfway point. It means that, okay, there are still challenges ahead, but we've passed the worst of it. So the 5, and I'm like, I got to get a better computer, because you can't see it. But what they're doing right here is there's a rope, and he's pulling the rope. He's pulling the rope. Everybody's pulling the rope. So the 5 of Wands.
I said, I know that feeling.
Yeah, it's a tug of war, right? So it symbolizes a war, but the energy of the 5 of Wands is different than the energy of a 7 of Wands. Not that you have it, but I'm making comparison. The 7 of Wands is my David and Goliath card, right? When it's David and Goliath, you really need an act of God. You need a miracle, because there's no way humanly possible that David can beat Goliath. No way. God had to literally intervene. The 5 of Wands is one man pulling against another man, which means that there may be competition in what you're doing in your life, what you want to create. There maybe you want to publish a book. You putting your book out, and there may be some questions about, okay, how is my book going to sell, right? Okay, there may be a different person who tells their story a different way, but that doesn't mean that you can't be successful. This is about everybody. You're going up. They're only people. They're only humans. So in your direction, there's action, there's movement in what you want to do. And yes, there may be competition. Yes, it may not be easy, but yes, you can be successful. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm living that already.
That was the whole point. This is to tell you where you are. So because it's a 5 of Wands, because it ended with a minor arcana, for me, that tells me that you're, to a certain extent, going to stay on the same path that you're on. It's not like you're going to make all these grand changes, but you're just going to handle your business, and your business is going to grow. Does this resonate with you? Oh, but you got the 10 of Pentacles. So yes, it's definitely going to grow.
No, this all makes sense. This is all what I believe.
Do you have questions for me?
This was amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have questions for me?
I don't know. I'm still trying to soak all this in.
He's like, I reserve the right. That's fine.
I
That's fine.
well, you know, as I kind of mentioned it earlier. Like, as somebody who is a therapist and I go to therapists, like once you get kind of done, you're kind of like, okay, how does this all sink in?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that is. I can relate to a lot of it. Like when you mention abundance, like I know for me, it's a little bit more about creating abundance and wealth for people who are just starting out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I first started, like it's tough. You don't make a lot of money. I think up until recently, when I really tried to expand out, and I was looking at different models. I was like, wow, like everybody's making money except for the LMSWs who are doing the work. And I just realized, wow, the system's so expensive. So part of my goal is I want to create people who are, I want to empower LMSWs, masters of mental health, people who are just starting out in this field, and give them an opportunity to make six figures while they're getting that supervision. And after they get that supervision, if they get their license like I have, if they want to leave, hey, let them leave, let them do whatever they want, because that's what they're calling for. But for me, it's just a little bit more about creating that environment and hopefully taking some of that pain that comes with the work that we do. $15 an hour isn't a lot. I'm lucky and I'm fortunate that I was able to enjoy it. But I also know for a lot of people who have this passion, working in New York City for $40,000 an hour means you have to get 2 or 3 jobs elsewhere. And if I can create a place to not just empower them and help them become better clinicians, but also to have a life for themselves and to be able to live in this universe and maybe check off one of those worry boxes, which is, hey, like, I'm doing this and I can put food on my table and I have a place to live over. That is the kind of wealth that Mental Wealth Solutions is looking to share with people, is to empower individuals in my field so that, they can get to 6 figures. And that's my goal. So hopefully that's what the 10 of Pinnacle means. But if it means more like generational wealth, that'd be pretty awesome too.
Yes. What you just said to me is confirmation for everything that I read, is that you have a goal, you have a vision of what you can create. And there may be people out there who've created something similar, but it doesn't mean that you cannot be successful in what you're doing. You just have to move forward and speak your truth. And then the people who are meant to resonate with your message will be attracted to you, right? You have the ability, but you still also have messages about not holding on too tight. So if you are called to invest something in what you're creating, especially small sums of money, I would tell you not to hold on too tight. Don't feel like, okay, it's going to cost me $20 to pay for ChatGPT. Let's say, for instance, that's an investment that's going to help you and benefit you and benefit everyone else in the long run. Right. So again,
and that I think has been over the past few weeks a big step that I've taken. I said, hey, I have I have streams that are coming in of revenue. What am I going to do with this? They were in other places, and those other places sadly were not creating the gains and the happiness that I wanted, even though that's what they were goal for. Where can I put them that I can make them happy? And I put them back into my own business.
Yes.
And as well as taking those particular steps. And honestly, it feels great.
I love it.
Because
I love it. I mean, everything has great energy because, again, one of the things for me as far as reading is, again, this is the 5 of Wands, but I always ask myself, okay, if we're here, right? Because again, I look at readings as a GPS, something like a crossroad, right? The GPS is only going to tell you where you're at, and I can give you the blueprint along the way to get to where you want to go. But at any point, you have free will to choose to go to a different direction. So if we look at where you are, what happens next? So logically speaking, the next card is the 6 of Wands. So what happens after the 5 of Wands, and what happens is the 6 of Wands, which is glory. It means success. It shows a knight coming back from war successful. However, one of the things that we all know in times of war, just because you might have won the war doesn't mean the war was easy. You lose partners and lose friends and comrades in war, and you come back to this crowd. I mean, look at Vietnam vets, everything that they've gone through. They come back and they don't always get the parade for all the work and all the sacrifices that they made, but they had to go through the war. They had to go through the battle. They had to go through the challenges in order to get to where they need to be. And they also need to make adult, that one jumped. Adult, it's like, hey, make good choices. Two of Swords, the Lovers, these are really about making choices, but you can't make a choice unless you speak your truth. You find
Right.
out who you are. So that's really, and then once you do that, as long as you don't hold on too tight, you wind up at a different part of your journey, and you wind up at passage. So I hope all that makes sense to you. We
That
are
resonates. Thank you.
You're welcome. We are coming down to the last few minutes of the show, and what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who's watching this show live, as well as everyone who may be watching it in the archives. So give me a
Oh,
couple seconds.
hi, I'm Matthew Sexton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm the owner of Mental Wealth Solutions. I'm looking for new clients in New York as well as the state of Florida. I'm also looking for LMSWs, Masters of Mental Health that need supervision, who are kind of tired of, just feeling like a cog in the wheel. My goal is to empower not just, social workers, Masters of Mental Health, but also individuals who are working in the world to empower themselves, identify where they want to go in life, and start taking those steps. For some of my clients, it's just learning how to build that life-work balance because they want to continue to kind of work in corporations and that kind of structure. For other clients, it's taking that huge step, stepping outside of that and creating their own world like I have. And that is what I'm looking to do for other people who are, in my field and at some point in time want to be successful. And that's, I guess that's it.
I love it. And where can people find more information
Oh
about
yeah, my website is mentalwealthsolutions.org. I'm on Instagram as Matthew Sexton LCSW NY, I think. And my company website Instagram is Mental Wealth Solutions USA.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for being a guest today, Matthew.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you want to sit right where Matthew is, you can schedule your own reading on my website at readmelive.com. Until next time, everyone, have a